The mic.
Hold on. The resident coordinator's office and old feature.
Yes. RC Association. Oh. But anyway. No, you have a soft voice. You're calmer than me. No, but you go. Yes, I guess we can start.
Amen. Media, they accept. Media, are you set? And finally, to identify challenges impeding the effective implementation of the white paper and recommendation to that effect. The importance of this gathering cannot be overemphasized. Because validation always allows us to fill in the gaps, to lend credence to the substance of the report, to review numbers and information as appropriate. I'd like to call upon the Honorable Chairperson of National Human Rights Commission, Mr. Emmanuel Daniel Juve, to come forward and deliver the welcoming statement. Honorable Chair, you are most welcome.
Good morning, and thank you very much, Dr. Bulmadi Sise, a chairperson of the National Assembly Standing Committee on Human Rights and Constitutional, the special advisor on the transitional justice process in the Gambia, the UNDP head of governance, Mr. Seni Sise, representative of the diplomatic and consular corps, the missions. Observe that they are present here. Madam Yvonne Masarakufa, wearing two hats of the RC and also of the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights, present here with us. Representative of the multi-stakeholder committee supporting the NHRC to monitor the implementation of the recommendation, the commissioners and staff of the National Human Rights Commissioners, stakeholders, participants invited here, members of the media, and ladies and gentlemen, I welcome you all to this validation meeting on the status of implementation of the government white paper on the TRRC recommendations covering the period 25th of May 2023 to 25th of May 2024. A special thanks goes to the United Nations Peacebuilding Fund for supporting this initiative. As was already stated by the Executive Secretary in his introductory remarks, when the TRRC Commission submitted its final report to the President way back on the 25th of November 2021, it was followed 6 months after by a government-wide paper on the report of the TRRC on the 25th of May 2022, setting out the government's position in the TRRC report. In the white paper, the government accepted most of the recommendations of the TRRC, and according to our records, out of the two outrightly rejected 2 recommendations, and accepted the rest, but in varying degrees, as we always say. Some were accepted fully, some were noted and then qualified. But one of the recommendations accepted in the government white paper was that the National Human Rights Commission will be the monitoring institution for the implementation of the recommendations. This was accepted by the government. But not only that, the NHRC was also tasked to submit a yearly report to the National Human Rights to the National Assembly. Following the release of the white paper, the government also, the following year, released what is called and reconciliation. That plan establishes a transitional justice coordination mechanism to oversee the implementation of the white paper on the report of the TRRC. It also identifies measures to be taken by the government towards the implementation and indicates the key stakeholders responsible for the implementation. Now, the National Human Rights Commission on the 1st of December 2022 set up a multi-stakeholders committee to support the NHRCs to monitor the implementation of the recommendations of the TRRC. And this committee has been meeting quarterly. And members of the committee comprises of all the key government ministries, departments and agencies and civil society organizations. Annual report to the National Assembly on the status of the implementation of the government white paper. Report. The Commission requested information on all the implementing stakeholders that are mentioned in the white paper, agencies, and victim-led and victim-focused organizations from and provided by members of the Multi-Stakeholders Committee in monitoring of the implementation of the white paper. The information on implementation process, including the print and online media, as was done during the preparation of the first report. And the process followed the same method that we used before we submitted the first report. If you remember, some of you were present last year, we had a similar validation workshop to review the draft prepared by the NHRC. And that is exactly what we are doing again. And this is to provide document. The draft has been shared with the Multi-Stakeholders Committee, and that is what we're going to look at again today. Yesterday, during our quarterly meeting, we also perused through the document and also gave some inputs on it. So the final draft, after today, we'll have a final draft and it will incorporate the inputs, the discussions and the suggestions that we will be getting from this group. So by subjecting the draft report to a wider stakeholder participation, the National Human Rights Commission wants to ensure that we submit to the National Assembly a comprehensive and up-to-date document that provides an accurate account on the status of implementation by the government. So our task as we get the assistance of this and the support of this monitoring committee and the participants present to review the draft report that has been prepared by the NHRC with the support of the Multi-Stakeholders Committee, but also to obtain additional information from stakeholders. We may have missed out something. There may have been gaps. You may have had some observations. And also to identify challenges impeding the effective implementation of the government white paper and make recommendations for timely and effective implementation. And also, finally, to also validate the report. The activity will be facilitated by the National Human Rights Commission, led by our Senior Legal Officer, Research, who will also make a brief presentation of the draft. Participants will be engaged in the discussions, and they will be divided into groups to examine different portions of the draft report and provide necessary updates on the areas worked on. The participants will also be engaged in a plenary discussion to present issues identified in the groups with questions received from participants on the issues discussed. In conclusion, to make sure that the validation process is smooth, as I said, we had earlier circulated the draft to the participants. And we believe that some, and I know that some, have already reviewed and given their inputs. Let us therefore all participate to make this draft heavy rain. We're really surprised. I know when it rains, Gambians don't usually come out. But we've really braved the weather and we came out. So please, let us participate to make the draft very comprehensive, accurate, and thank you all for coming. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair. I think the message is very clear. The draft has been circulated. So let us review to make it more comprehensive and accurate. Thank you very much. At this point, I would now like to call upon Mr. Seni Sise, Program Specialist and Head of Governance, UNDP, to come forward and deliver his statement. Thank you.
Do I hold it? Thank you. Thank you very much. Uh, good morning to you all. In the interest of time, may I stand on the well-established existing protocols and recognize all of you and thank you very much for coming. I am making this statement on behalf of the UNDP and the OHCHR. I am honored to be here today for the validation of the second status report on the implementation of the White Paper on the Truth, Reconciliation and Reparation Commission TRRC report. I would like to extend our deepest appreciation to the National Human Rights Commission for their unwavering commitment to this vital process and for inviting us to speak on this significant. Gentlemen, it's important to reflect on the journey that began in 2018 when the government of the Gambia established the TRRC, investigating and documenting the nature, causes, and extent of human rights violations that occurred between July 1994 and January of 2017. It is vital to recognize that women and girls have borne the brunt of such abuses during this tumultuous period. Many have suffered as survivors of sexual and gender-based violence, while others have faced the heartbreaking reality of losing their spouses and mustering the strength to raise their children alone. Therefore, the establishment of the TRRC was a courageous step toward truth, healing, and reconciliation for our nation. The publication of democracy and human rights in the Gambia. The second status report prepared by the NHRC implementing the white paper. While we celebrate these achievements, we challenges that require our collective determination to address. Today, opportunity to review our progress, but also to a moment for open dialogue and formulate recommendations that will guide our path forward. Our work is far from complete, and you will hear from the Commission as they present. It's a pressing issue in the country. Those who have suffered must have their voices resonate in our discussions and actions. The implementation of the TRRC recommendations and the white paper reflects our commitment to addressing past injustices and preventing future violations. This is an initiative that calls for active engagement from all sectors of the society. National partners alike. As we delve into today's validation discussions, I encourage each of you to share your thoughts, insights, and recommendations. Together, we can pave the way for a transparent, accountable, and inclusive implementation process that genuinely reflects the wishes and needs of all Gambians. As I conclude, let me reaffirm UNDP's and OHCHR's commitment to support the government of the Gambia during this crucial phase of building a more equitable society, as articulated in the Recovery-Focused National Development Plan 2024-2027. Together, we can ensure that the Gambia emerges stronger, united, and committed to upholding the rights and dignity of all citizens. Full discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sise. He highlighted that the TRRC recommendations is a courageous step towards ensuring justice, accountability, and to prevent future violations. And he also encouraged collective effort to overcome challenges along the way and assures us of UNDP OECHR support to government in the implementation process. Thank you very much. At this point, National Assembly Standing Committee on Human Rights and Constitutional Matters to come forward and deliver his statement. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Gafama. Good morning to everybody. And I would also just take from where the last speaker stood on. Without waste of time, I go straight to my statement. We're talking about human rights. We're talking about violations. The validation that we're going to conduct today is going to talk about people whose rights are violated, how we could address them. It is 30 years today, from 1994 to 20. A long time of waiting. Victims have waited quite a long time, 30 good years for some. Many of them died to survive. I think this validation is very timely. Precisely on the 25th of November, the TRRC presented their final report to government. There is 4 years down the line. Again, it is also too long to wait for 4 years. Every Gambian is a victim of the Jammeh administration. Some of us are direct victims, some are indirect victims, but every Gambian is a victim. So therefore, to wait for this so long a time is really cause for concern. Government did not waste time after the presentation of the final report on the 25th of May 2022 to come up with a white paper, that's the position of the government. And we have to applaud government for really accepting almost all the recommendations. Out of the 265, only 2 was outrightly rejected. That they can be commended for that. But the space that we are moving towards getting justice is at a snail's pace, and that is a real cause for concern. The worrying, and that is worrying as justice is seen to be delayed. But it is also more volatile to have perpetrators and victims crossing shoulders in public places, in banks, in supermarkets, in schools. It's very disheartening. Confessed perpetrator who has violated somebody's right and go for this long, 30 good years for some, 25 for some, 15 years for some, 10 years for some, and at least 4 years for some, or 8 years for some. It is really disheartening. I must commend the National Human Rights Commission for the methodology they are applying to look at this, to carry on their task. They are tasked to monitor the implementation of the white paper. And they are not doing it all by themselves, but they are opening up. And that's why we are all here to validate their report, so that all voices, if not all, but most voices, could be heard and put into the validation, into the document. Then when that is presented to the National Assembly, this is not only coming from the National Human Rights Commission, but coming from a lot of us. They must be commended for that, Chairperson. To conclude, I therefore urge government and other stakeholders to improve on the implementation of these recommendations. Like I said, they recommended, but they should improve on it immediately without any delay. I thank you all.
Thank you, Honorable Madi Sise. He acknowledged the courage of the government by accepting almost all the recommendations of the TRRC report, excepting two, according to him. However, he lamented on the slow pace of attaining justice for the victims who have waited for so long. However, he urged the government to improve on the implementation timeline. Thank you, Honorable. At this point, I would now like to call upon Honorable Ida Person, Special Advisor on Transitional Justice to the Attorney General and Minister of Justice to come forward and deliver the keynote address and opening statement. Honorable.
Thank you. I don't think I'm being heard though. I might have to use this. Yes. Thank you, Dr. Gassama. Mr. Emmanuel Diouf, Chairperson of the National Head of Governance UNDP and representing the UNDP resident representative, but also Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights. Honorable Madi Sise, Chairperson, National Assembly Standing Committee on Human Rights and Constitutional Matters, and Ms. Yvonne Masarakufa, here representing the RC, the Resident Coordinator, and the Office of Human Rights. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, all protocols duly observed. I'd like to start by congratulating the National Human Rights Commission for reaching yet another milestone in the monitoring of the government white paper on the TRRC report. Congratulations. I suspect that you've had your work cut out for you this year, considering we are in September, but we will not lament on that. I think that's just an indication of good work being done, not just the Human Rights Commission, but to all present here that are supporting implementation. So congratulations to everyone. I wanted to disclose that lately, my unit, which is the Secretariat of the Steering Committee on the Implementation of the TRRC recommendations, has been deeply enthralled in the process of developing a communication strategy around the white paper. We know that the road to full implementation of the white paper is a long and expensive road to travel, and naturally, there will be moments of great challenge and even disappointment. In this process of deep reflection on how best to communicate around the process, it has become quite apparent that we continue to live in a society that is very divided. Yet we continue to develop this communication strategy because regardless of the challenges and how challenging it would be to implement the white paper, we cannot simply relent in our efforts to see the Gambia more reconciled. I'm sure you would all agree with me that reconciliation contributes immensely to preventing a recurrence of conflict and building a more peaceful, resilient, and prosperous society, particularly in the aftermath of large-scale violence and human. Reconciliation helps to repair fractures caused by an absence of trust between the state, government, and people, when individuals and institutions acknowledge their role in past crimes, and both victims, survivors, and perpetrators must reconciliation without justice, and there can be no justice without truth. And this is true. But our concepts, ladies and gentlemen, of reconciliation must evolve to keep up with the changing nature of conflict. It can no longer be confined to those people and those institutions that have been directly involved in past crimes. The world today is witnessing conflicts that are complex, and Gambia is no different in this regard. All over the world, social, economic, political inequalities are growing, amplified by the climate crisis and new technologies. Democratic spaces are shrinking, stoking identity-based politics, discrimination, intolerance, and hate speech. Mass-scale violence and destruction is at the rise, sometimes incomprehensibly justified as a right to self-defense at the expense of almost entire destruction of people. Here in the Gambia, we are trying to recover from the legacies of systematic human rights abuse, and we have committed to fully implementing the government white paper on the TRRC report. But the manner in which we do this must respond to all these challenges. We must be broader, deeper, and more inclusive than ever before in the way in which we implement the TRRC recommendations. Our reconciliation process must have an impact on institutional, socio-political levels, but even at a regional and an international level. Ladies and gentlemen, I have to extend the sincere regret of the Honorable Minister of Justice for his absence here today because of prior commitments. But he does send his gratitude, as do I, to the leadership of the NHRC, to the staff of your Legal and Investigation Directorate, for your diligent work in monitoring the implementation of the TRRC report. We are equally thankful to partners who have contributed technically, financially, but also politically and morally towards this process. I'd like to acknowledge the Ambassador of Germany to the Gambia and the Deputy High Commissioner for their support as well. If I may remind us all in this statement that the completion of the work of the TRRC and the presentation of its final report in November 2021 was a milestone event towards consolidating peace and reconciliation in the Gambia. The TRRC made very, very important contributions towards transitional justice, and it culminated this in these sets of recommendations. These recommendations, we agree, if fully implemented and done so in an inclusive and broad and deep manner that focuses on issues that seemingly are happening outside of the Gambia, have the potential to further consolidate peace in the Gambia and to advance reforms across several areas of our society. If we are to truly move from a divided past to a shared future, we must recognize that this future is to be shared by generations unborn in places far beyond the Gambia. I thank you all for your full dedication, your strong partnership, and I have great confidence that we, by open.
Thank you very much. We have come to the end of the session, and then we have the 13th item, the full agenda after that. Okay? Yeah, you're almost welcome. No,